everyone, and welcome back to the Mystery Theory. Today I'm going to talk about a very requested case, and this is going to be the case of Kim Wall. So, you probably heard about Kim Wall. This is a pretty recent story, or case, or something that was talked about for quite some time, and it was pretty big. Kim Wall was not born in 1987. She was from a little gated community in the southern part of Sweden. Now, according to what I read, because I haven't seen it on a map, wherever she was born, it was kind of across of it. It would be Denmark. So it was right on the border. It was a beautiful place, and Kim was a very smart girl. She was described as ambitious and driven by her family and people that knew her personally. She studied international relations, and she actually had 2 master's degrees, and one of them was in journalism. Now, journalism was one of those things that really she had a passion for. She was great at it, and she grew in the business very, very fast because of it. She was very well known for talking about things that people wanted to read about. Some of them were like gender identity and all those kind of very social important matters in the world. Not only where she was from, but around the world. And people loved her pieces because she had kind of a justice tone to them, like she was trying to be that person, that voice that would speak up for those that didn't have one. Her work was so good that she was published around the world. She even got published in some of the most known, or here in the States, is, the New York Times, and she got prizes for her pieces. I mean, she was really relevant, and her pieces were virtually everywhere because of it, and because of the interesting topics that she covered. Now, in 2017, she became a freelance writer, a very successful one, or reporter, I should call her, and she traveled around the world to find the next best story. So she was going all through this very dangerous countries, some of them even having problems, political problems. She was really adventurous that way, and she was really interested in trying to find that story that the world wanted to know about, and she was passionate about it. She was fearless, and she really wanted to get those voices that are not heard and publish something really important about them. Now, in August of 2017, Kim was with her partner Ali Stobbe. He is a Danish designer, and that was her boyfriend at the time, her partner, and they were staying in Copenhagen when she came across this DIY inventors that they privately financed the building of rockets and submarines. One day, Kim and Ali were walking around, and they bumped into this old shipyard where she started to learn a little bit more about this DIY inventors and what they were doing with it and how they were working. She kind of knew the backstory of it, so I don't know if she was doing research already on the matter, but apparently this local celebrity, quote unquote local celebrity, for what he was doing, was funding itself. And Kim knew that he was part of another project, a bigger one, and the number one competition for this new company. Apparently, they had a lot of disagreements when Peter was working for them. And Peter was actually the engineering part, he was the brains of the operation, and he was a little bit cocky, and he believed that he didn't need so much, so many orders from the people, the owners, the actual owners, or the financing people in the company, and they had a fallout. And so Peter was, now doing his own thing there, and I think that's why Kim was so interested in knowing how a guy, that just left the company, came up with a new one, and it became the number one competition for the company that he used to work for. And there was a lot more into it. The idea of them privately financing their own building of submarines. There's not a lot of people that own a submarine privately. It's something that it's used more, maybe in the military, than the operations and things for the country. They're not very common to be privately owned. So Kim was very, very interested in this. Now, Kim was passionate about her work, as I mentioned before, but we were in the month of August, and on August 16th, Kim and Ali were going to leave, and they were going to actually move to Beijing, where I believe that Ali had some kind of a work thing there, so they were actually moving to stay there for quite some time. So that was going to be on the 16th, but on the 10th, Ali and Kim were getting ready to get some kind of a party, like go away party, where they were going to have a big barbecue. I heard that it was in like their backyard that overlooks the ocean. I don't know, but that sounds pretty cool to me. But so they were going to have this big barbecue and invite all of their friends there. And after being in so many dangerous countries, and after working all around the world, they were, back in Copenhagen. They were just having a good time, and they were about to leave. But on that day, Kim got a message from Peter Madsen, and he said to come over for tea, and that he would agree to some kind of an interview or something, because he knew that she was kind of sniffing the story, and he wanted her to have it, which was pretty cool and pretty nice of the guy to do that. And especially, now that they were in a time crunch, and now that Kim got the okay from whatever company she was working for, she told them about what she was researching in the submarines and these companies, and she got the okay, but she didn't get to work with them yet and get any interviews. So all of a sudden, 6 days before she leaves, and specifically on the night that she was going to celebrate, with her friends and everything, she gets this message. But as I told you before, she was very into her work, and she was very proud of it, and she wanted to get the latest story. So she decided to tell her partner, I'm gonna go have tea with this guy for an hour, and then I'll be right back, and we will continue with the party and our get together with our friends. So she goes and she has tea with the guy, and then finally when she comes back to the party, she explains that this guy Peter was a different kind of weird, that he was all over the place, and that he was not making a whole lot of sense, but that he offered an exclusive she would have to go with him in the submarine so she could take pictures and have that little interview there to make it a little bit more personal and exclusive for what she was working for. She was really apprehensive, but she, told her partner, "Why don't you come with me? I really want to get this interview, but I feel like this guy, it's kind of weird." She didn't mention the guy to be dangerous or that she was afraid of him, but she mentioned that the guy was a little bit all over the place and that, it wasn't one of those things that she was like, "Okay, I'll go," and, like she was excited to go. Now, by the time that she told this to Ali, he said, "Well, our friends are already here. I can't leave them here and go with you. Why don't you go? If you really want to go, why don't you go? And then come back fast so we can continue the party." I mean, this was a huge opportunity. This was a 58-foot sub built from donated iron and parts. It was part diesel, part electric. I mean, this was something that she really wanted to talk about and she wanted people to know about. But even though it was a 58-foot, it was a confined space. It was something small to be with a guy that you don't know underwater and really helpless because you have no idea how that works. And if something goes wrong, you really don't know what to do. And I'm assuming that was her fear. But at the same time, she kind of shook it off and decided to go. At around 7 p.m., she started to send a series of pictures that she took inside the submarine. One of them was with Peter. The other one was by herself. And, different parts of the submarine that she decided to share with her partner. The last message that her partner received was from Kim saying, "I love you. I'm still alive, but we're going down." What an odd thing to read after, you learn about the details in this case. It's just heartbreaking. Now, one of the things that it was also said is that before they actually went underwater, one of the friends at the party, for Ali and Kim, they saw Kim waving from the hatch door thing before they went underwater. I mean, I didn't know that you could do that, but apparently it's something that you can. So she did, and Ali waved goodbye to her. Now, the party continued, and it was very, very long. And at the end, they decided to move it to a bar. So they went to this bar in the area where they were all going to wait for Kim to come and spend some time with them, of course. Now, the next morning, Kim and Ali had a wedding early in the morning that, she needed to get ready for. So at 10:40, when she texted earlier in the night, and I'm sure that he understood that he had a signal there, and maybe that she didn't throughout, the interview, or maybe while they were underwater. But it got to the point that at 10:40, he just knew that something was wrong, and that it took way too long for her to get that interview done, and just worried because there was no way that he could talk to her. Now, he did report it to the authorities, but an hour later he also reported it to the Navy. At this point, the people waiting for the submarine also realized that this was too long. The submarine should have been back already, and it wasn't. So they also reported it as missing. Now at 4 a.m. they started looking for this submarine, and it was finally spotted between Sweden and Denmark. just this little spot where somebody said that apparently this submarine had no lights on and that almost collided with a ship. Now, apparently, the guy in the ship saw the submarine going his way, and he could maneuver around it or move around it and not collide with it. But, and according to my research, it was because even though the submarine didn't have lights, the moon was out and it was very bright. So that's why he managed to see the submarine and actually, avoid that wreck that could have happened there. Now they continued to look for the submarine in the area because it was spotted there. But at around 10:30 a.m., Peter actually made contact saying that he was having mechanical problems with the submarine. At 11 a.m., a witness that was actually looking for the submarine saw Peter get out of the submarine and actually just swim to I'm not sure if to a boat or an area where he could reach land. But he saw him there, he helped them, and when he got out, he said that he was okay, I'm okay, but I'm sad because the submarine is sinking. When the police interrogated Peter and asked him, where is Kim? He said that he dropped her off the night before at around 10:30 p.m. in an island by a restaurant, okay? So he didn't know where she was. He basically dropped her off there because he was starting to get some kind of mechanical problems, but it wasn't a big deal back then. So he dropped her off there in that restaurant so she can continue with her night. Now they tried to find witnesses that would corroborate the story that he dropped Kim off in that island, but nobody came forward. And another witness he said, well, if the submarine was sinking, as he's saying, it looked very weird because he was very calm and collected. He didn't seem like he was running away from a sinking submarine. So the police decided to go to the restaurant and get the CCTV or cameras that they have around the restaurant that he said that he dropped off Kim at. Now, just so you know, this restaurant has a lot of cameras. It's not only, you're getting into the restaurant kind of camera or going out, but they have a series of cameras and they looked all around, but Kim was nowhere to be found. So at this point, we can't really believe that Peter even went to the island to drop off Kim there, and that we know that she didn't make it back anywhere to land, that she probably was still inside the submarine at that time. Now the police continue to look for Kim, but at this point I'm sure they had something because they charged Peter with involuntary manslaughter in an unknown place, in an unknown matter, something like that. I'm like, okay, I like that kind of charge because if you have a little interesting character like this one who's making up a lot of lies, and it's good that they had something that they could arrest him before he flees or something while they are still conducting the investigation. Now, another thing that a lot of people can't even believe how they did it, but they immediately got DNA that didn't belong to him and it actually belonged to Kim, from his face, from his hands, neck, and nostrils. Now, nostrils is one of those places that they scientists that can keep DNA and actually help the investigation, because most people don't even think about cleaning that area. Now, there's even a picture online where you can see something that looks like blood on his face, under his nails, and I mean, you can see, I think it's two like drops of blood in his nose or around his nose, and he wasn't injured. So I mean, the police didn't have to look very deep to realize that this guy was doing something fishy. You could tell. At this point, the authorities already recovered the submarine. It was only 22 feet down, and they checked the submarine and they realized that it was that somebody made it sink. This wasn't some kind of a mechanical problem. Whoever wanted that submarine to go down just found the easiest way to do it. And they also found inside some blood that belonged to Kim, and it was coagulated blood. So it's starting to look a little bit worse and worse for Peter. At this point, we know that Kim got in the submarine, that she left with the guy. We have witnesses that saw her inside the submarine, and we have Peter saying that she did in fact go inside the submarine. But where is she? Well, let me tell you. There are so many different stories that Peter came up with while he was being interrogated. I am not going to go into the very small details. I'm going to give you just the basics, because I think it's gruesome, because I think it's dumb that he gave so many excuses and so many unlikely scenarios of what happened to her. So you can read more in detail the different theories, but basically the first thing he said is, well, you found the blood because Kim had an accident. And I'm gonna kind of refer to my notes, because it really doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I haven't been inside a submarine. And I don't want one, unless you count the one in Disneyland, Finding Nemo. And it was pretty creepy. Not Nemo, Nemo was cute, but you know what I mean. Now, he said that when Kim was on board, she had an accident where a 150-pound hatch fell and hit her on the head. Apparently, she then fell to the bottom of a tower, and she had a fatal head injury. And he panicked, so he used a rope to drag her body up and out the submarine. And he basically, and I'm gonna quote him, buried her at sea. So bury her in the sea. In other words, toss her overboard. This guy, really. That was the first thing he said. The police at this point decided that they needed to see Kim's phone, and they needed to find his phone, computer, and pretty much anything that they could get their hands on. They never found Kim's phone or his phone, but they did find a computer where he had videos and pictures of decapitated and sexually impaired and even tortured girls or women. Some of them were animations and the other ones were real videos, and there's one in particular where a girl is being decapitated, and that he was watching that content. When they look inside his computer, they could find all these videos and things back to 2004. So he's been watching these videos and pictures for a really long time now. So this wasn't something that maybe somebody else looked up before he left on this execution, dismemberment, beheaded, girl agony. Right before, and maybe while Kim was getting ready and talking to Ali before going with him in this little trip. Then, when they found all this, he said that, well, a lot of people had access to his computer, and a lot of people could have watched those things or look up those things. But at the end, he said that it was actually him, and he was dead inside, and he just wanted to feel alive. So that's why he was looking up those videos. And he assured the police that he had no sexual pleasure by watching those videos, but that he was dead inside and he wanted to feel alive. Well, you're a sick son of your mother. Now, on August 21st, around 3 p.m. in the afternoon, a guy was riding his bike in this area and he stumbled upon the torso of a woman. He immediately reported it. They checked, and it was in fact the torso of Kim Wall. This was, of course, 11 days after. And when they found the torso, they found belt straps, things around it that they were trying to weigh down the body with pipes. So it was kind of strapped and with pipes around it. And of course, this making it look a little bit more suspicious, because if Peter at this point said, well, she was dead and I threw her overboard, why is she in two pieces and with sinks, with this, pipes around her body to sink her body? It's looking a little bit less likely, the story that he's been telling the police. So at that point, I am sure that the police questioned Peter again, and he changed his story. I mean, I think this is the third time that he changed his story. And he said that when she died, he was dragging her body and her clothes came off, which, by the way, who cares? It's not about the clothes. But he said that he was in such pain to see what happened to Kim that he almost committed suicide. Which, by the way, doesn't make a whole lot of sense of what they found, but let's go with it. And so now the charges were changed to manslaughter, which, by the way, I've heard a podcast, and actually two of them, that were talking about the manslaughter in different countries, okay? So their manslaughter is not, in Denmark at least, is not what we consider manslaughter here in the States. And I had a note here that says that for Denmark, it's something like premeditated murder here in the States. So don't be upset. It's not, oh, manslaughter, 4 or 5 years in jail and you'll be out. No, manslaughter over there, it has a different meaning. Okay, so now the autopsy was done and they found that she was stabbed 14 times around her vagina and in and around her vagina. And on top of that, she also had one to the rib cage and one other in another area. And all that was after she was already dead, according to the autopsy. Now, the autopsy is not very clear. It says that she died of, she didn't have air. She couldn't breathe. So they don't know if she was strangled or asphyxiated. Does it really matter? I mean, that's a horrible way to die. But they knew that he probably that he cut her limbs a saw, and that he probably just threw them, in separate areas or in different areas, so that hopefully by tying it with pipes and things, it wasn't going to get to the surface and nobody would be able to find her. Now my goodness, I mean, this is some of the best police work that I read about in a long time, but they did study the weather and the currents and everything. My goodness, and they came up with a possible area where her limbs would be at. And this was 2 months later. They brought cadaver dogs, and apparently these dogs can smell, I think it's 30 meters underwater. So are they super dogs? I have no idea. I'm sure there's a perfect explanation for that. But thankfully they could find her. Well, they found her head and Snickers and some pieces of clothing, and in a separate bag they found a knife. And 0.6 of a mile away from where they found the torso, then they found the legs. And they realized that in fact this guy was trying to hide the body by continuing the pattern of cutting her into pieces and then getting some straps to get, with some kind of a pipe or some kind of something. He was trying to weigh down the body. Sorry, it just blows my mind that somebody can do this. And I read horrible things, but I don't know if you follow the story. Somebody that's successful, that's doing, all these good things around the world, and that is ready to move, that she's in her going away party, and then you read that she was cut into pieces and trying to be sinking into the ocean. It just blows my mind. Now Peter, at this point, he continued to be questioned, and he continued to say that he had no idea, that he knew that it was an accident, and he didn't understand why her body was into 1,000,000 pieces, basically. Yeah. When they check what, the other parts that they could find was the head, and they did the autopsy on the head, and they realized that really she had no trauma to the head. So that debunked the whole theory that this was an accident. So now he changes his story again after that theory has been debunked. And he says that she was in a part of the submarine where she was poisoned by carbon monoxide. Now keep in mind, this is a very smart guy. He knows exactly the chances that can happen, and he knows exactly how can that happen to her and not him when it's such a small space, confined space underwater. So it would make sense. He said something that it would actually make sense that could have happened. He also said that then when he found her lifeless body, he decided that he was going to get rid of the body. Of course, because you see an accident and you do that, right? You get the strength to cut somebody into 1,000,000 pieces and throw them overboard and bury them in the sea. No, I'm sorry. You don't do that. Normal people don't do that. If you see an accident, you call 911. If you had an accident and you can't reach 911, you try to get to a hospital. You try to get somewhere. You don't even know if they're 100% dead, if they can't be resuscitated. So, yeah, this guy was given a whole lot of baloney that nobody was buying. The police found one arm a week later, and then the following week they found the other arm. What are the chances? This was great police work. This was great teamwork, and even though the story is very, very sad for a country experience in this kind of thing. And I pray that they don't get that experience, because they can live happily ever after forever. This is some of the best work that I've seen for quite some time. Now, prosecutors, as you can probably tell, they're not having the stories that this guy is trying to sell them. And he kind of even changes a little bit more, saying that he was so premeditated that he took every single tool that he would need in order to kill her and do everything, and that he was also planning to film the whole thing and maybe even make a video to share. Sadly, they found the camera, but they couldn't find the memory card that can hold those last moments of Kim. The prosecution believes that he did in fact film everything, and those were his plans, since that was the kind of content that he was actually consuming online. Just so you have an idea, he took a saw, knives, sharpened screwdrivers, zip ties, straps, and all those materials and tools that he actually would need in order to do everything that he did with the body. The police also assumed that he probably tied her up immediately and kind of tortured her, then kill her, and then stabbed her. Some of the people that work with Peter were called to testify, and they said that having those tools that I just mentioned to you was really not likely, and that he would have to purposely put them inside the submarine, because they're not things that are used or kept inside of it. Now he changed his story again. Peter did. And this time he said that he stabbed her so many times because he wanted to release the natural gases that she had in order to sink the body. So he not only cut her up into pieces to make it easier for him to carry her body up and get rid of her, but he basically said that he didn't do it for what the prosecution is saying, that he did it for some kind of pleasure. Apparently, after everything, the experts concluded that what he said, it was not probable according to the autopsy and everything that they had to do, and that she had nothing in her lungs that would prove what he said that happened to her. Now, he was found guilty, of course, and of all charges, and he got life in prison. Life in prison is a little bit different of what it's here, but it's still something that it's not given in so many instances, at least there. And there's only 25 people serving life in prison in the entire country. Now I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about him, Peter, and I think it's gonna help make a little bit more sense of the sickness that he had in his head. Not excuse, but his dad apparently was an alcoholic man who would hit and abuse his, I think it was some kind of step siblings that he had. He stayed with his father. I think he had a divorce, and he started to study. He wanted to go into engineering, and he got into school and everything, but he quickly realized that he was too smart and that he knew everything that these teachers were telling him and teaching him, so he decided to drop out. But he was extremely smart, so he continued to educate himself in things that he was interested in, engineering, and became one of the best ones, self-taught at least, that was out there. Now he had a lot of swinger parties, and he was into a lot of orgies and things that interested him. And even though he was a weird character, he was so smart that he was finally, hired by this other company that later on was their rival. When they got rid of him because of his cockiness and in him not really wanting to listen to what the people with the money in the company were telling him. They also learned at the end of the trial that he was doing this weird things with girls, inviting them over, and almost like he lost it at the end. Almost like, and Kim was the final straw, the one that he actually could act on the way that he wanted. So in conclusion, he was a sick person. He was somebody who, for some reason, nobody suspected, but who was involved in a whole lot of things that are not, common. And because he was smart enough, and because he was bright, because he was a money-making machine, a lot of people kind of ignored the fact, or tried to not pay that much attention to the fact that the guy was really fishy and he was doing some creepy stuff, and that he was interested in very weird things, in very not healthy things. And that kind of shows you the world that we're living in. If you're smart enough, you can get things overlooked by the people who benefit from it. If you are bright enough, if you can make the money, then you're just kind of strange. If you're not, then you definitely have some kind of a mental issue. Do you know what I mean? This is sickening. People knew that he was an interesting character and that he was into a lot of sick things. A lot of people in the area knew that he was getting these girls to go, and I don't know what kind of extent he abused them or he tried to, but what a coward. And how cowardly, I just can't believe that you can be that character and people not really notice what you're doing. He was a smart guy, but if Kim, by one conversation with him, could tell that something was off, if you're working with this guy, if you see him on a daily basis, can't you just tell that something is off? Yes, he was bright. Yes, he knew what he was doing as far as business. But things escalated to the point that I'm like, it shouldn't have. So I hope that you have a better theory than mine. But this case leaves me with that in my head, that if you're smart and weird and you're into sick things, you're just a little bit, you're so smart that you are a little bit weird. But if you don't benefit anybody, and if you're just not that smart of a person, then you have mental problems. And you will be reported. Can we just change this thing around and see people for what they truly are? It doesn't matter how smart you are. If you're sick in the head. And it shouldn't matter how smart you are. Now Now she was a smart, beautiful girl who was, I mean, so young and with so many achievements and with her whole life ahead of her, with the perfect plan to move to Beijing and, having family and friends, kind of having a goodbye party for you, and then, another smart guy, another smart person took advantage of it, and that kind of leaves me with a lot of I don't even know how to call it. Kind of makes me lose faith in humanity. And so every time you do something out there and you're trying to be innovative and you're trying to get the exclusive and kind of get out of your comfort zone, then you have to wonder if you're not in the hands of a sick individual, because no matter how smart he is, no matter how self-taught he could be, or how much college he had, you can still be a sick person. This is not about being dumb or being not smart or being smartest or being the best or the worst or the average. This is about plain humanness, let's call it that way. We're humans. We make mistakes. We have accidents. And we have illnesses. And we have problems. So I hope that one day we can get to the point where we can see things for what they are and not for what they seem in the outside. How you look like, what you have, what you're worth. And I hope that this doesn't have to happen ever again. But unless we change as society and we start to care about each other, unless we start to truly care about each other and keep an eye out for each other, these people will continue to hide in society in plain sight. Their names will be recognized. There will be local celebrities that deep inside are very sick and waiting for the opportunity to do something like this. So even though I don't think this guy will ever change, I hope that he finds the help that he needs. And I hope that when he's okay, he can reflect on what he did and maybe find some kind of remorse. Because up until this day, every single thing that he has said really shows him trying to cover his butt, such as that case.